Hello, everyone, and welcome back for the second time today, since we had our other talk within the Nine Sided Circle this morning, and now we are having our usual Sunday talk. I am one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle.
And I am the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us. We've had a few people pop in here twice today, and some familiar friends and some faces we haven't seen in a while. This is excellent. And we're having a lot of fun right now because we are running with an ongoing theme of alchemy. So if you're here for that, awesome. We are going to be continuing that theme for, I think, another talk or two, but we've already done two so far, one last week and one this morning. And with that said, I want to thank you for being here, whether you're here live or on the replay. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, of course, we have to say the whole like, comment, subscribe thing. Those are the best ways to support us online. But you
Especially
can
the
also...
likes. If you watch the video, hit the like button because that's what the algorithm sees.
Right. I think people underestimate how powerful that is. So if you enjoy this video, please let us know by giving that thumbs up.
Yeah. And as a special thing, we are arranging to do an interview with a actual alchemist. I have a friend who he is a literal alchemist and not an amateur. He's a pro. So
others benefit from his expertise in
yeah.
a tangible way. Yes.
Yeah, he makes alchemical elixirs for any number of things, and he's quite good at it. So I figured since we're talking alchemy, we might actually want to talk to an alchemist.
We'll get to learn more directly from the source. That is someone who is doing this work in the now, as if it's not the simplest thing in the world, but as if it's a real thing, because it is a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taking things out of the realm of theory and into the realm of practice is a little bit similar to what we plan on doing today, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
The plan for today, this evening, is that we are going to look at the alchemical process. And we are going to look at it not for turning lead into gold, which seems like a silly thing to do to me, or making plant elixirs or doing any of the other important things that alchemy does, but internal alchemy, the alchemy of human transformation, because the model, as we were talking about earlier today, the Emerald Tablet states, as above, so below, as below, so above. If you can use the stages of transformation according to that model are kind of universal. So if you can turn lead into gold, you can turn the lead of your soul into gold.
So this is a big topic this evening.
Big topic, which we're going to treat lightly.
Yeah, I think we're going to, we've had a long day ourselves, so we want to make this both informative and not so heavy. So before we get into that, though, I suppose I need to do brief announcements, which is simply that we are still leaving our digital Durga Sufi. Technically, we've called this our Sufi class in the past. We are kind of transitioning into calling it a sohbet, which is the more traditional term for the Sufi gathering that we do, where people can take what we're talking about and bring it into real world practice. It's a more intimate setting. It does require people to be dedicated to showing up and or watching the content, which is available monthly. We meet up monthly. So you'll find more information about that in the description. There's going to be a link. And additionally, our Sufi retreat, not our Sufi retreat specifically, our live in-person retreat that is happening in Sweden in May. You'll probably see lots of banners around our media for that. That I will also have a link to in the description below for signing up for further information and perhaps registering if it's interesting to you. All right. So,
or if you're crazy.
or both, that's fine too. That's kind of our MO after all. So, Mushnak, you're talking about not necessarily the alchemy of turning, like, metals into different kinds of metals. We're talking about inner transformation.
Yeah, as we said in one of our earlier talks, alchemy is a process of purification. And there are 7 steps to this purification. As a matter of fact, why don't I just pull up the graphic, which is not a great graphic, but I had to do it today, so.
Yeah, there we are.
There we are. And so what you see here over on your left is an ascending octave. It ascends from the bottom to the top. The 7 notes of the octave are the 7 steps. Over here in the middle are the layers of Nafs. Each of these steps addresses. And this is just the English names so that we don't get too terribly confused. So are we ready to dive into this?
Now you all are seeing the image, right? Thumbs up if you can see it. Good, okay, great. And this will be posted, for convenience, we'll put it on the Facebook group afterwards too.
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay, so down here, the tonic note is called calcination. And this is the first step of the alchemical process, according to the ancients. And when you are working on yourself, you are working on the nafs al-amara, the commanding self. This is the self that gives you all of the mechanical traits that we all love to hate. So, calcination, if you were doing alchemical calcination on a substance, this is a process of burning the substance, reducing it to a fine, fine, fine white ash. And in this case, we know that in physical alchemy, there are different kinds of fires that one uses to do calcification. What is the fire that we use to do the calcination of the nafs? Any guesses? It's a process.
James. Yeah, I see James is unmuted.
Yes, James.
Is it what's referred to as conscious suffering or related in some way to conscious suffering? That's just the first image that springs to mind, or is that a bit removed?
No, actually, it's pretty close to that because the process will create conscious suffering.
Ah, okay.
The process in this case is, in English, it's called self-observation. And this is where one takes a really objective look at oneself and one's behaviors, which is really uncomfortable when you see how much mechanical behavior you exhibit. And that will create some serious conscious suffering because you have to be willing to endure the uncomfortableness of seeing yourself as machine. You see all of the stimulus response reactions that you have in the world, and none of it's any fun. But seeing that and being somewhat repelled by it is what creates the heat that does the calcining.
And for those who are interested in getting more into the specifics of these layers of these stages of the Nafs, we did a video back on that.
Yeah, and it'll be linked
a while ago.
up
So
in one of the corners at
that'll
the
be
end
at
of
the
this
end.
video.
Yeah. And I did see Hind unmuted as well.
Yes, Hind.
Yes, I was going to say the calcination, it can be the committing a sin and then feeling bad about it.
That's one way to do it. Yeah, you know, actually having real conscience over some stupid thing that you've done is one way to develop the heat. Probably the single most painful way to do it too.
Thanks, Hind.
Thank you.
So go ahead. We're going to
I was
say
just
something.
going to say, you were probably going to continue to explain, your thoughts, but I was curious about what you have to say about that alchemical fire.
What do I have to say about the alchemical fire?
Yeah.
It burns. It definitely burns.
Ouch.
Yeah. The getting an actual look at ourselves can be extremely uncomfortable because you have to give up your illusions. And one of the things that you are burning in the calcining process is your illusions. And this gets us to the second stage, which is dissolution. Dissolution is taking the product of calcification and dissolving it. And you do that with various things in physical alchemy. But here, what it talks about is what we would call self-remembering. Self-remembering is the fluid, is the alkahest. That's a term that means the universal solvent. It literally will dissolve anything. In the physical world, it's a little bit difficult to have it because nothing can contain it. Within yourself, self-remembering is the alkahest. And when you turn self-remembering on the contents of the nafs, it literally begins to it begins to loosen everything up. And it's an operation that gives a certain amount of energy to the process. Now, dissolution is the second stage of the development of the nafs. And that's, in English, we call it the blaming self. And this is where part of you starts pointing out to you what's wrong with you. And this is very hard to hear. I mean, you have that which is within you going, oh, look, you're a terrible person. You totally suck. You've done all of these bad things in your life.
Yeah, this is also known as the accusing self.
Yeah.
For that reason.
And you have to hold that state of self-remembering, that state of muraqabeh, of being the witness to this, in a way that allows it to pass through you with nothing sticking. Because if something sticks, it's like getting a burr under your blanket, right? It just becomes an irritant. But if you hold that state of self-remembering, you can be conscious of all of these things and allow them to pass through you and let go of them one after another. And that gets us to the third state. The third state is called separation. And that means that through the process of dissolution, you have you've divided your thoughts and emotions up. You have looked at them. You have separated them into and now you're separating them into their elements. And that allows you to observe them even more clearly. This is what we call self-witnessing. And I don't know if this is more or less painful than anything else. The thing that this does is that it allows you to begin to free energy for yourself.
So what might separation look like here?
You have an event. The event produces a feeling. The feeling triggers reactions. So you separate the reactions and the feelings associated with the reactions from the actual feeling itself.
Mm.
So you get down to the real feeling connected to the event and away from the mechanical behaviors associated with all of the triggers that come after the feeling. Does that make sense? I can elaborate more deeply if you like.
Might be a good idea, because I think here's where it starts becoming more nebulous, I guess we could say.
Okay.
So what might be an example?
I am thinking right now.
Hmm.
So I'm interacting with somebody and they say something to me, and that whatever they say causes me to feel maybe a little sad or maybe a little hurt. They've hurt my feelings. Now, the sense of hurt feelings becomes a trigger. And that can balloon into all manner of thoughts of rejection and all manner of past times that this has happened. Oh, this always happens. I meet somebody and I think we're going to be friends, but then they reject me. None of us have ever done that, but yeah. So from an actual response to a pattern of behavior associated with that response. And that's what you have to separate out to where you can get to what was the actual response.
Instead of what spiraled out from that.
Yeah,
like,
what
oh,
is triggered out and
Yeah.
where do the mechanical aspects of this lead you? So this separation does that.
like anger masks an underlying sadness or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah.
And when you do that, this part actually feels kind of good.
Mm.
when you start doing it. And that's why it's called the inspired self, because there is a sense of elation that comes with this freeing oneself from the unending cycle of triggering.
Yeah, well, it's that kind of, oh my god, everything makes sense now, and all of this other stuff is just things I've been piling on top of the actual thing that I now have a better way of wrapping my head around now. And so, of course, yeah, it tends to create that sense of elation and inspiration that everything is getting pieced together and worked out. But it is kind of just the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I noticed that I have an error in here that I have to just talk about here,
Yeah,
because I put the
don't worry
same thing
about
in.
that. We'll fix it.
Yeah, we'll fix it.
Posted. Yeah.
Yeah. So, after that, we come to the process called conjunction. Now, once you have separated, you have to put the stuff back together. But in conjunction, you want to recombine the elements that you have been purifying in a balanced way. In standard alchemy, they talk about the male and the female, but for me, and the more Sufi alchemy, we talk about the affirming and denying and reconciling being balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were listening to us earlier today, you remember us talking about the metaphor of the sun and the moon. Conjunction is the sun and the moon being brought together to create the possibilities of the chemical marriage, as it's called.
Sounds very medieval.
It's very medieval. And it is very comfortable. This is a happy place. This is like, if you were doing the Enneagram of this is 0.4. This is the honeymoon of the entire process. We call it the secure self. So you're feeling good now. You've done some serious work. You are actually better off than 90% of the people out there.
Like I said, you feel like, oh my god, everything's starting to really make sense now. I think I might have it all figured out. Not so much, but you're well on your way to taking on bigger challenges.
Yep. This is also known as the peaceful self, because you feel like you're at peace.
And we've also mentioned that this is the place where people unwittingly tend to get stuck because
Oh
it
yeah,
feels
this is
good.
halfway up the mountain. And when you get there, you usually think, oh my God, I've achieved enlightenment.
Right. So this is where what we might call spiritual bypassing might occur.
Yeah. So the next step is called fermentation. And fermentation is the place of most work. It is all of these materials that you have put together in their balanced way now go through a process that allows them to digest all of the negativity. This is a death and rebirth place, and it's hard work.
On an Enneagram, this
On
would
the Enneagram,
be
this is 0.5.
0.5, which is considered kind of like
The
the
dark night of
dark
the
night of
soul.
the soul, yeah, where you're
Yeah.
just hauling ass through the slog of it all, where you're just like, really, am I not done yet? When does this end? This sucks. You may or may not quite see the light at the end of the tunnel at this point. So really your job is to just keep sticking to your guns and stay committed to the process.
Yep. And they say that this is a two-part process. The first part of the process is called putrefaction.
Yeah. So again, we have that sense of crossing into the domain where you cannot undo what is done.
Yeah.
There's a lot about this that cannot be undone when it comes to
Yeah,
alchemy.
literally parts of you die at this point.
Yeah.
But that gives you the second part, which is the conjunction actually manifests, and something new is born from the process. And they say this is where the as above and the so below meet. The spirit is properly merged with matter.
So what's going on with the Nafs at this point?
The Nafs at this point is called the gratified self, or the satisfied self, or the pleased self. That's another way to think of it. And what's going on with that is that you are feeling like, oh my God, I have done this process. And again, you can get stuck here.
Yeah, because there's a sense of contentment here too.
Yeah. As opposed to the next one, which should read the pleasing self, or the gratifying self.
Yeah.
Which is where the individual spirit is connecting to the divine. So the next step is called distillation. In distillation, you are heating the putrefied matter, the fermented matter. It's the same process as making whiskey, as it happens. You have this mash that has been fermenting in a pot. And when it gets to the right level of fermentation, just the right level, you bring up the heat under it. And it's a gentle heat, it's a slow heat. And that dissolves the, in the case of making whiskey, it dissolves the alcohol, or it vaporizes the alcohol, which is then goes through a distillation train where it's recooled and then dropped into another pot. In human beings, what you're doing is you are leaving behind the bad parts, the bitter, the acrid things, and only taking the sweet parts. I'm pulling from Paracelsus in this. I can give you an actual quote here. In distillation, many bitter, sharp, and acrid things become very sweet, like honey, sugar, and manna. And on the other hand, many sweet things, such as honey, sugar, and manna, kind of fall apart. And that's from Paracelsus. And the idea is the final purge before the last step happens here. And you have removed the most essential part from any and all impurities using this alchemical heat. And that's known as the pleasing self or the gratifying self. And this is where you're in the pleased self, you're happy with God. And God is happy with you. But in the pleasing self, you are happy with God in a different level. You are moving towards connection. So you could say in the pleased self, you like God likes you. In the pleasing self, you finally figure out that you like God. And that gets us to the last stage in the process before it's finished. And this is called coagulation. And that means that through these processes, what remains after it goes through all of them is taking the purified you and bringing it back into something that is suitable for being in the world. This is a state of maturity. And the three qualities are in perfect balance with each other.
The three qualities being
the affirming, denying, and the reconciling.
One's embodiment of those.
Yeah. And they are also, again, fluid. So that you can manifest the triad in any of its 6 forms, which gives you incredible superpowers. I mean, you make Superman look like a stumbling old fool. And
yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was just
please.
going to ask if anyone has any questions so far, because this is kind of a front loading of content specifically because there are several moving parts here. We have the language of the model of these stages of the Nafs in its development. The Nafs being what is essentially known as the ego. And at the same time,
and without these bits, the next talk is not going to make as much sense.
Right, yeah. So then we also have the moving parts of discussing these stages of the alchemical process. So we have to have these 2 frameworks in some degree of familiarity with them, which is why I'm recommending that people do take some time to not only watch our little intro video on alchemy, where Mushtaq went through each of these alchemical steps, and also our talk from a couple years ago, which will also be at the end of the video, where we discuss these stages of the Nafs in much greater detail, so that you'll be able to find a synthesis between these 2 frameworks with more ease. But nonetheless, this is an overview that I think will give people something to come back to if they're not already able to follow along.
So what you get out of this is this last part here. When you hit the next octave, when the tonic doubles and the new octave is begun, you have created the Philosopher's Stone. This is known as the Insan al-Kamil, or the perfected human. And here's the thing, the Philosopher's Stone is transformative to its environment. The alchemist uses the philosopher's stone to make transformations in other things. And that's what a person who has actually gone through this becomes, is somebody who by their mere presence is transformative. They don't even have to do anything. They don't have to be big teachers. I'm going to put this away so I can actually stare at everybody. There we go. So I have been nagged into beginning to write an autobiography of sorts. And the place that it starts is in a little fast food greasy spoon hamburger joint in the middle of the desert that is run by a Buddha. And without ever saying anything spiritual, if people show up at this place, they walk away with a little bit of transformation just from the interactions of ordering a hamburger and talking with this guy. I have spent many hours sitting at this place observing what goes on, and it was phenomenal. He's passed away years ago, but it was illuminating to see that transformation happened without preaching, without exhorting people to be this way or that. It happened purely by interacting with an awakened presence.
An example of what's possible.
Yeah. And that is what the Insani Kamo is. He doesn't need to tell you that you've got something wrong with you and you need to fix yourself. Or she doesn't, because there can be a she as well as a he. Just by hanging out with them, life is better. And you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to join a cult. You don't have to do any of this kind of stuff. So that's where ideally we're going.
So yeah, any questions or thoughts?
I had one. I was just wondering, this may be a stupid question, but can like do all of these processes happen like one after another, or is it possible that they can happen simultaneously, except the last step, of course? Like,
yeah,
can they happen?
They tend to happen sequentially.
Okay.
Yeah, if you try and do them simultaneously, explosions happen. Because just as in physical alchemy, you're working with some volatile substances. One spark, and it all goes up.
Yeah, I'm not entirely clear, but I think we did touch on that in our intro to alchemy, didn't we? I vaguely remember that. Yeah, just that it can, psychological breakdowns happen because we get ahead of ourselves in many cases, and you kind of have to build the resilience it takes to put ourselves through the rigors of challenging the things that we have come to believe make us who we are. It's pretty destabilizing to unpack those. So building a skill set around that is a bit by bit thing rather than an all at once thing. But that's a
Right.
good question. It's not a stupid question at all.
Thank you.
Anything else, Rishabh? Just
That's all for now. Thanks.
all right, great. Hind, yeah.
Yes, I think sometimes it can, like in a case of a big trauma,
Mhm.
it can happen simultaneously. Or sometimes people they came from the near death experience.
Yeah. Near death experience is jumping you all the way up to like the second to the last step.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about how there are times when people need to take what they've learned from experiences like that and walk themselves all the way back to the beginning of this series of steps so that they can digest that experience in a way that is, I think we've called it like crystallization, crystallization of the ego in such a way that it becomes less helpful and more damaging to reach a certain level of spiritual quote unquote knowledge, and then you realize, oh my god, I thought I had advanced to this level, but really there are things that I have learned and take for granted that are getting me stuck in, say, spiritual bypassing. What do you do then? You do have to take some steps back and figure out, all right, what do I need to release my grip on so that I can continue to grow forward in a way that does not get me stuck in things like spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Hind?
Yes, I think that once we start in the process, the self-observation, and we do that each time, after that, we are in the process and we come to understand that everything, bad things, everything that happens, it happens for us to work on ourselves and our nafs, and we are more conscious about the process, and it's because we have lots of things to work on, so we're always working on ourselves.
You're not wrong there. I mean, you're not wrong on any of that. Yeah. I mean, as Mushtaq and I are always joking, and this is a very common phrase these days, the struggle is real, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thanks, Hind. Does
Yeah.
anyone else have thoughts or questions? David, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I guess, well, I'm kind of hanging in there because my internet connection is unstable and things are going in and out, so I'll have to rewatch part of this.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, this talk is to create the background for the next talk. So bear that in mind, is that this is an ongoing process, much like life. We are laying this out for the month of January. January is Alchemy month.
That seems to be how it's ended up, which has been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. James, what are your thoughts?
Well, a question. Now you've already explained how the stages are sequential. You don't do them all at once. But the very early stages, can one find oneself shuffling between them repeatedly in cycles? before moving into the higher stages, or can there be repetitive, perhaps if one's not doing it properly or something, or there's just a lot of material to work with? Can those first 2-3 stages find myself in a repetitive situation?
Yeah, you can up until a certain point, you can kind of
Right.
recycle this stuff. You can
Okay,
take 2 step forward and 1 step back.
let's step back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. After a certain point, you can't go back.
Okay.
And to attempt to go back causes amazing damage to yourself.
Is that the crossing of the equator?
That's the crossing of the
Right.
equator. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah, that transition between where you're at and the 4th step of the process, moving through to the 5th step of the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But and this is delving into what we're going to be talking about somewhat next week. Is there are 2 shock points in this process. If you look at the chart, one is at the mi-fa interval, the interval between mi and fa, and the other is the interval between si and do. And if you don't cross those 2, you recycle again.
Yeah, did we talk about that recently? think
Probably.
like,
We talk about that a lot.
Before the
it's
holidays, we did a talk on that, I think.
yeah, that it's a theme with us.
Ah. Thanks, James. I see that Rishabh's unmuted and Hind is unmuted. Rishabh.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so would that be the negative crystallization of Gurdjieff, what Gurdjieff says?
In part, yes. If you are not careful, you can end up there, but it's not necessarily there. Sometimes it's just you don't get past the shock. That's not a negative crystallization.
Okay, so that's like a Gurdjieff concept, all right.
Yeah.
Got it. Thanks, Rishabh.
Thanks.
Hind, yeah, I saw you unmuted. I'm sorry I didn't catch it sooner.
No, it's just I didn't.
You didn't get to finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Please feel free. Did you have more you wanted to share?
Yeah, maybe can we say that on alchemy, what we do for the nafs is when we like the metal, we take the, let's say, heavy metals on it's the vices that we have, like jealousy, envy, and this is what we are purifying.
Yeah, you can absolutely say that. That's a good analogy. And heavy metals is a good example because they are toxic and they must be chelated or chelated from the body.
Yeah. Yeah, I know this is the same term we use to for the vaccine.
Yeah.
When we want to clean the body from the vaccine.
Chelation, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Just want to make sure, Hind, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to share?
No,
good.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. All right. Yeah, Mushtar.
Yeah. So anybody else with any thoughts? Because otherwise we can wrap this up for the night.
Yeah, I guess this is a pretty, this is one of the quick ones.
No, we've been going for about an hour.
Almost, yeah. Levita, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Good. All right, yeah. Yeah, and we did do a couple talks back, and, if those help at all, it might be worth checking those out. But I'm glad you're here. Nancy, how about you? All right, yeah, gotta unmute you.
Sorry, I was catching a phone call, but I'm going to listen to the video and take notes and pass them on.
Yeah, no problem. That happens.
Yeah,
I
I
do
was
take a call.
wondering, and maybe you covered this, is it more like purifying your individual traits, or is it kind of like the whole self?
The whole self.
Yeah. And the traits take care of themselves when you do that.
Yeah, well, you address the traits, but as Mr. Gurdjieff used to say, you must either change everything or change nothing. You can't go halfway with something like this. So you're looking at an entire transformation.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts, Nancy? I mean,
Nope, that's it.
all right. And Jacob is driving, so if he has any questions, I just want to speak to you, Jacob. You can always follow up on YouTube or in the Facebook group, and we'll touch base with you with any thoughts you might have to offer as well. But in the meanwhile, just drive safe. So, with that said, yeah, do you have any last thoughts to add, Mushtaq?
This stuff is hard.
It is hard, yeah.
It is hard. This
I'm
is
learning
not
a lot as we
your
go.
weekend workshop instant spiritual enlightenment stuff. This is the hard work, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a little adjunct to what we do as our core practices, but we thought because it is a major part of some Sufi work, we should address it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think that we can do, if not maybe like a long-term coverage of the topic, I think taking a month just to touch base on it, because I think a lot of us have either passing or more in-depth interest in the subject matter. And if we can put that in the context of the other things that we do related to Gurdjieff and Sufi philosophy and practice, I think it's a good way to create a well-rounded understanding.
Yeah, and it's the next phase for us. When we started doing this, we would basically put 100 topics in a hat and pull one out each week. But now we're getting a little bit more focused.
Yep. I think, well, Jacob says, I've worked closely with alchemy in context of Hermetic Kabbalah, but seeing it applied to Sufism is certainly unique. It's not something I think is talked about a lot in Western contexts. What do you think, Mushtaq?
You mean in Western Sufism?
That's kind of
no, with there's a branch of the Ovaisi order out of Iran that I know one of the teachers of that, one of the recent teachers was really deep into alchemy and wrote some on it, mostly in Farsi, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But this was during the Islamic Golden Age. This was what gave the Western world all of its sciences. I mean, the guys who were doing alchemy were also doing optics and chemistry and medicine and all of these other things, and it all combined. And we must not forget that we got that by it percolating up from Spain. So it came across from the Middle East, across the Maghreb, and then from Morocco into Spain during the period of Spanish, of Islamic Spain during the period of Andalusia, or Al-Andalus, as we like to say.
Yeah. So this is an ongoing story, and I'm really looking forward to you and I, Mushtaq, doing that interview with this friend of yours, who I'm sure we're all gonna.
He's
have
an
a lot to
interesting
learn from.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say as last thoughts? Yeah, I mean, we're going to post some of the. Okay, let's go to that. So I get the sense then, says Jacob, that in the Islamic Golden Age, things like alchemy might not have been so quickly brushed off as, quote, innovation. Sorry if that's too political.
No, that's true. It was not brushed off as being innovation. Innovation in Islam means that you are adding something that wasn't in the Quran, basically, the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah. And it can get, I mean, it's an important aspect of textual purity, and at the same time you can get really carried away with it in directions that are not necessary.
We're talking about innovation, right? And
yeah,
kind of keeping, you know, like bringing in a lot of irrelevant stuff versus the natural expansion of the science
of knowledge.
yeah, of which alchemy would have been a part.
Yep. Yeah, but when you look at the history of that period in Islamic history, it was a period of intellectual expansion rather than of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And that was mostly supported by governments and clerics, and it was a lot different than it is today.
Yeah, I think I don't know if there's a talk in there, but that is a big topic unto itself.
Yeah.
The gates of ijtihad being open or closed. That's like the pursuit of knowledge and critical thinking and all of that stuff. And that is something that is said today, is that the gates of knowledge seeking and critical thinking and all that stuff are closed. But honestly, I think that's more of a socio-political football in the sense of it's not necessarily, it's true in the sense that there have been things that have gotten in the way of the expansion of knowledge, and yet that has been used as a control mechanism in ways that are not historically accurate. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yep. But let us not go down that particular rabbit hole tonight.
No, but again, you know, perhaps that could be a future talk, but that's going to be like a history lesson. But thank you, Jacob.
That's going to be the one we need asbestos gloves to touch.
I mean, that reminds me of my religious studies days for sure. But nonetheless, we will be putting some files up on the forum for you to peruse relevant to the discussion we've had this evening so that you guys can use them as we carry this conversation about alchemy forward.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah. Yep, and we'll edit the things that needed to be edited on that thing. It's not a big deal. Yep.
Actually, it's a huge deal.
A huge deal.
It's a huge deal. I will suffer greatly as I do this for everybody.
We can all feel bad for him. There you go. Here's my pity.
All right. Well, I'm going to shift over to Brady Bunch View.
All right, then.
There we are.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up again or for the first time today. Either way, we are so happy to have had you, and thanks for spending time with us. Take some time to peruse and review the videos that we've done over the past couple of weeks relative to this one. And we will talk to you soon. We can wave to each other and everyone watching on
Take care,
YouTube.
folks.